It has been a whirlwind trip for the U.S. president. He pushes his agenda abroad, but there is still a cloud looming over the White House as the Russia investigation continues. Douglas Smith is joining me now. He's a former assistant secretary in the Department of Homeland Security. Why don't we start with Brussels? He has a complicated relationship with NATO, as you well know, during the campaign, saying it's obsolete, talking about these guys have got to pony up the cash. So talk to me about this setting, because it seems like it might be somewhat awkward.
Yeah, I think as they say in sports, game on for Donald Trump. I mean, the challenge that I think he's beginning to realize is just how involved they've been. You know, a little known fact is Article 5, which is the benchmark of NATO. It's when one ally is attacked, they all agree to back the other one. The only time that's been invoked, 9/11. And so here Donald Trump is belittling and talking about how obsolete and how NATO is not needed, and yet the one time where we had to pull that red lever for help was following a tragic incident in the United States. I think what he's going to see now is that as the world is so complicated, and what happened in Manchester yesterday, what continues to happen the world over, that never has it been more important for this cross-country cooperation. Your earlier piece talking about how they were able to get data in Libya so fast. That doesn't happen just overnight. That happens through countries cooperating through one another, through intelligence services working with one another. And I think when Donald Trump walks in there, you know, he's going to have to follow in some very big shoes. Angela Merkel, you know, the new president of France, obviously Theresa May, who comes out of this world. She was the Home Secretary in the UK. You know, a lot of people with tremendous expertise in national security space, of which we've seen in the United States. Painfully, he is really on a steep learning curve.
He's also, he talked a lot about a wall, but his positions are not a wall. They seem kind of, you can push him in a lot of different directions. He's changed in his beliefs quite a few times. Are we going to see that in Brussels as well?
Yeah, I think we've already seen that on this trip. I mean, he is clearly, you know, behind people's back and hiding behind Twitter. He's okay insulting people, but when he's face to face, you know, he likes to see a smile. He is desperately just always in search of being liked. And I think when he walks into that room with some very, very smart, well-connected people, I think what we're going to see is Donald Trump doing much what he did in Saudi Arabia, what we saw him do in Israel, what he saw this morning with the Pope at Vatican City, is he's going to try to sort of appease them and say, you know, I'm here, I get it, I'm working with you. You know, the proof, as we say, is, you know, the proof in the pudding is going to be how quickly he jumps back on Twitter and how quickly he begins to insult his host there.
I talked to a foreign policy expert a while back, and he said, you really want to watch a president on the world stage, watch their second term when they're a lame duck, they can't get anything through Congress. And you saw that with Obama, with Cuba, and of course Iran. But this president's really having a tough time with his domestic agenda. It seems like Washington just a beehive of bad news. We look at this trip as possibly a reset. Has it been a reset for him?
Yeah, I think unfortunately not. I mean, he's done okay, but he's continued to have missteps, and all the while he's been gone, massive stories breaking here. I mean, domestically on his budget, you know, dead on arrival in Congress. I mean, the Republicans who control Congress have all said we're not voting on it. You know, devastating new information came out today on his Attorney General not having reported previous contacts with the Russians while he filled out his form. So I think as desperately as he's tried to change the narrative, it's been very, very difficult. I mean, the one interesting thing, though, is here, following the tragic incident in Manchester this week, very little coverage. You know, it's all about the scandal surrounding Trump. I mean, it's the one thing, who knew that Trump could take terrorism off the front page through his own actions here. So I think a lot to see what happens in NATO tomorrow and how the other leaders respond to him. But he's definitely got a very, very uphill climb.
And then you mentioned Jeff Sessions, another story in the New York Times, saying that American spies collected information last summer revealing that senior Russian intelligence trying to get to Trump through his advisors. So these stories, they're just not going away.
Not at all.
All right. Douglas Smith, always a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming in.